All right. Hi. Okay. Sorry about that. I got on a coughing jag and I thought I had paused, but I hit the stop. So, this is part two of my story about my animals. Apparently, I've still got a frog in my throat. But we buried Mimsy is in our backyard, and we haven't had any more chickens since that time. We do have a pond of fish that come up to eat when I call them. We got them at Walmart, little feeder goldfish. We had koi when we moved in, and we were having trouble with the pump hitting, cutting off the circuit breaker. And my husband was so worried when we'd be away on weekends or whatever, if the pump went out, that my son wouldn't catch it or he wouldn't know what to do. And so I said, well, why are you stressing over this? Let's get rid of the koi if that's your concern. I don't need you having stress over a pond. And so we contacted the owners that we had bought the home from. And it turned out that those koi had come from her father's uh, yard. He had several ponds in his home up in Salem, and he had actually contacted them to see if they knew anyone that had any koi that they wanted to get rid of. And so our timing was perfect. We said, well, come get these koi. And so they came and got them. They said, well, this is full circle for them because they're going to go back to not the original pond, but to the original home they had before we got them. And so all these koi went away, and then here we had this beautiful waterfall and pond and nothing in it. So I said, well, let's go get some goldfish. That way, it's not big, expensive koi. And if something were to happen, it wouldn't be as heartbreaking. I mean, it would be for the fish, but. And so my husband says, well, we're going to have to get an awful lot of them if, to fill that big pond. These are just little fish. And I said, well, funny thing about goldfish is they will grow to their environment. And he's like, oh, come on. I said, no, seriously, just trust me. Over time, they will grow to their environment. And so we do have that first generation that we call the whales because they are good size. And my husband was shocked, surprisingly so. And then they've had several breeding cycles since then, so we've had to give away a lot of fish and all of that. But yeah, even the fish respond. They'll come up if I call them, and I use this little fishy, fishy, fishies voice, and they come right up to the surface because they know that means they're going to get fed. But so that's where we're at now. We have the goldfish. We lost Sugar. Sugar and Mister. I actually saw a posting on Facebook of a rescue in California that had these two dogs. And it came with a beautiful letter that their owner had written, and it was written in Sugar's voice. And it was saying, we've been watching Daddy get weaker and weaker over this last year. And he doesn't want to tell us what's going on, but we know something's going on. And so it went in that vein that he was dying of cancer, and he went and he researched. Apparently he lived in southern Washington, the southern end of the state, which is a shame we didn't know about him. It would have been much closer. But he went all the way down to Northern California to meet with this rescue. And he told him the situation. He says, I will keep them with me as long as I can, but if I have to go into hospice or anything, at that point my daughter will bring them to you. But I want to give a big donation to your rescue if you will promise me that these dogs will be placed together. They've never been apart. and and if you'll, I'll pay for their care and upkeep, whatever needs, until they get placed, but please promise me you'll do that. And so they did, and I contacted them. I read that letter and I took it to my husband. I said, "What do you think?" And he says, "What do you mean, what do I think?" And at that time, he was very afraid of pit bulls. He had never been around one, never owned one, but he had sat on a pit bull case of a woman who had been attacked and mauled by a group of pit bulls. So he had very lousy opinion of pit bulls. And I said, Walter, we need to give these dogs a home because they're in trauma. They've just lost their dad. They've been in foster. They don't know what's up. And I'm sure they're very lost. And with your ability to communicate the way you can, you can go a long way to help heal their minds and their little hearts after this loss. And so I showed my son and his family the picture, and he's like, "Well, yeah, when are they coming?" And I was like, "Okay, I figured that'd be your take on it because my son is a big dog lover, just like his mama. My daughter, not so much. But yeah, if he could find a perpetual puppy, he'd be in heaven. but but anyway, so we contacted them. They said, "Oh my gosh, you sound absolutely perfect for these two. Where do you live?" And I told them, and they're like, "Oh, darn it." And I said, "Well, we could work it out to come down to you." And in the meantime, I'm going to pause here. Okay, sorry about that. My husband had come into the kitchen area to get some lunch, and I needed to get up and get Mr. lunch squared away for him. My husband seems to think portion-wise that he should eat like a 6'1" man. In other words, the same portions my husband gets. And I'm like, no. There's too much Mr. now. So I try to handle his portions. But anyway, they're squared away. I'm back to my story. I was storying about those two. While we were debating if we would go down and pick them up, we got notification from the rescue that they actually had a couple that would foster dogs for them, who's offered to drive them up here over the 4th of July weekend that year. And we were shocked. They're like, "Oh, we've got a friend in Salem, and we're going to go up and visit with him and spend 4th of July, and so we can bring the dogs to you." Great. So they did. And we met the two dogs, and talk about bouncy and vibrant. They were 9, but they were sure full of pep and energy. In fact, the gentleman, the husband of the husband and wife team that brought them, his name was Van, and he said, "My gosh, I thought I'd see a couple of little old, doddering dogs at 9." He says, "But," he says, "they're full of spunk." And he says, "Sugar," Van has a bald head. He says, "She washed my head the whole drive. She was licking up one side and the other side." And he says, "I'm driving with this pit bull, like, giving me a bath." But Mr. was a little more standoffish. He played his cards pretty close to the vest the first year, almost a year, I think. And he was having a hard time letting go of his previous owner, and he missed him a lot. Now, Sugar was just so grateful. When they got up here, I have a round chair that used to be, it's a round swivel. It doesn't rock, but it swivels. And I used to have it here in the library. And she climbed right up in that chair and claimed it. It's in our bedroom now. It sits at the end of our bed. And that was her spot until she left this planet. She loved that chair. Um, and so she curled up in that chair, and I came up to her and I said, Sugar, you're in your forever home now. And she brought her head up and looked so startled at me. What? I said, this is your home now. You will be here until you cross the bridge and go back to Doyle. Um, that was her owner, previous owner. I said, but hopefully you'll be happy here, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you have a comfortable, happy life while you're with us. And you don't have to worry about you or Pee Wee anymore. You're both here where you belong, and that's where you're going to be. Well, she took that to heart, and I guess she had been under a lot of stress because that evening she happened to be curled up in a bed next to my son's computer desk, and my son was on his computer doing stuff. And he said that she woke out of a really, apparently a traumatic dream, because he said she was very confused and looking around, and then he reached down for her and she climbed up in his lap, and my son's almost 6'4", so he could definitely handle a 65-pound pit bull with no problem. But she climbed up into his lap, and he says, I've never heard this, Mom, but this dog literally wept tears, and she keened in grief like nothing I've ever heard from an animal. And she just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and he just reassured her that she was okay. And obvious, even just the short time that, hang on, that she had been in foster care, which she went in the first part of June, late May, first part of June, and we got them, the 4th of July, literally that weekend. But 6 weeks of the unknown, and probably all the stress of watching Doyle continue to fade and not knowing, and I'm sure they knew at some level, but they didn't know, the day or the hour. They just knew that it was imminent that they would be losing him. But I think it just all culminated with her in that moment, and she just poured it out all over Keith's chest, and he told us about it later. He says, oh, about broke my heart, Mom, to have her feel so sad. And I said, well, I'm glad she was able to release it. And like I say, with my husband's ability to communicate, he really helped bridge them through those anxieties as they would come up. And with Mr., like I say, it took him a while. And we were dropping off to sleep one night, and my husband said to me, and at that point, Mr. was sleeping in our bed with us, and Roxy, we still had Roxy then. Sugar, she wouldn't allow up there. So, in fact, we had to keep her and Sugar pretty separate until he could work with Sugar enough to have her quit attacking Roxy. But like I say, Roxy was such a schizophrenic. She kept telling Walter, well, I'm trying to protect you because I don't know, that dog's crazy. I don't know what she's going to do. And he goes, well, she's not going to hurt us. And she's just going to get more crazy if you jump on her like that. And she's like, but I'm just trying to pin her down till she regains her sanity. And he says, well, that's not going to happen with that dog. But, and so he finally worked with Sugar and convinced her that, don't react. And she did. And over time, we were able to open the gate between the kitchen and the family room, which is where we spent most of our time on that side of the house, and allow Sugar to at least be a part of the family in that regard. And then after Roxy was put to sleep, then Sugar was allowed in our bed finally, and she got to spend her last few years sleeping up there where she always wanted to be. It was just broke our hearts because she would just look up there and longing, I want to be part of that. I want to be in the family bed. I want to, and we were just like, oh, man. But anyway, Walter said to me, Pee-wee is struggling with something. I said, yeah, I know. I've had a sense of that too, but I'm not sure what's going on with him. Is he opening up to you? And he goes, well, I'm not quite sure because, that little guy holds his cards mighty close to that vest. And I'm like, yeah, but see what you can do. And so I sat there thinking about it, and I said, I think I know what it is. And I told him, I said, um, he was with Doyle. He didn't have to divide his loyalties. If anything, he just had to divide his time with Sugar to have time with Doyle. And you could, in fact, they even referred to Pee Wee as Sugar's sidekick. So you could tell he was kind of along for the ride, although the pictures I would see of him and Doyle, Doyle always had him right under his arm, and then, Big Sugar sitting on the couch next to him and his arm around her. But, and Walter got images of Pee Wee riding shotgun in Doyle's lap when he'd be driving. Well, he was like a 7-pound dog then. He's a 17-pound dog now, so he can't do that anymore. And he doesn't really like to go on rides much anymore. The only time we take him is if we're going to go for a long weekend somewhere, usually to the coast. Short drive for us. It's about 75 miles. and we always take Mister with us, and we get places that allow animals, and so he's with us the whole time. But he's usually on my lap during the trip, because he doesn't even like to ride in the back seat until he's to the point he's ready to fall asleep. But I told him, I said, I think that's what it is. I think he's been so devoted to one person. He's not lived in a family, and he doesn't understand. He's feeling like he has to make a choice. Which one is going to be my human? Is it going to be her, or is it going to be him? And I like both of them, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And so I said, okay, we need to talk to him about what family is and that it's okay. And so we had that conversation with him the next day, and he took it all in, and he was looking back and forth as we were talking to him. And then you just saw this whole weight lift off of him. And he's like, oh, I can love you both. I don't have to choose. And that's when he started spending mornings with me, curled up in my lap. And then after lunch, he would go down to the office and be with Sugar and Walter in the office, and back and forth. And then when Walter had finished for the day and come up to the family room, then he'd usually spend his time either one or the other. And if Walter was playing with Sugar, then he'd climb up on my lap. And so that was his problem. And it was interesting when he decided that he could let go of Doyle. This was, again, about a year after they were here with us, and Walter was out mowing. And all of a sudden I heard the mower stop, and I thought, that's weird. He hasn't been mowing that long. What's going on? And he comes in the house, and he says, hold out your hand. And I said, what? Hold out your hand. I did. And he drops this metal slide. Is the best way I can describe it. I'd never seen a dog tag like that, but it mounts on the collar itself. And it has, at each end, it slips on, and then it can adjust along the collar wherever you want it, but it's got all of their relative information for if somebody found the dog. And I said, well, where the heck was that? He didn't come with this, because I remember the collar he had on when they brought him to us. It didn't have anything like that on it. He says, I think Doyle dropped this in the yard as his way of saying goodbye to Mister, and for Mister to accept this new living arrangement, and for Mister to let go of him. He goes, because this was right there on the north end of the grass line where I was mowing. I would have mowed right over it. And I was like, you're kidding me. As many times as you've mowed that yard? He goes, yeah, if it was there, I would have found it long ago, many mows ago. But that was Doyle's message, that he was happy where the dogs were, and we let Pee Wee sniff that, and he sniffed it, and I went and stuck it in my jewelry box where it still is. And then that's when Mister began to let go. Now, when we lost Sugar, Walter and Mister were having a very hard time. She totally changed Walter's mind about pit bulls, and she allowed him. Walter lost his sense of smell when he was a young, late, he might have been 11 or 12, not quite a teenager. but he got into something in the attic that his dad had up there. All he says is it was some kind of really harsh liquid. He opened it up and took a big sniff, and it literally knocked him out, right out of the attic. And he fell down the attic stairs to the ground. And when he came to, he was down there laying on the ground and realized he had no sense of smell. So whatever it was fried his sense of smell. But Sugar, when he told her, he'd watch her, out in the yard with her head in the air, sniffing and ranging the neighborhood with her senses. And he says, oh, it must be wonderful to be able to smell like that. And then she says, it is. Why? Can't you smell? And he says, no, I can't. And she says, well, come with me. And so he piggybacked on her scent trail and mentally went on a sniffing adventure through our neighborhood. And he was shocked when he got done with that exchange and said, I never realized they could smell things from that far away. He says she was clear out of our town area, clear down in the farmlands, heading out to one of the little towns that's just south and west of us. And he says, I'm just amazed that their noses can pick up what they pick up. And he thanked her for letting him have that adventure. Those two used to have a lot of adventures together. And he came to understand the beautiful heart of pit bulls. And so he is more than willing for us to have another pit bull, even though I'm saying now that I think our years of pit bulls may be coming to an end because we're older, our shoulders don't work as well as they once did, and we don't move as quick as we once did. And if we were out walking and the dog suddenly bolted after something, it would certainly take me down to the ground. And Walter, I think, he would hold on with all he could and potentially hurt himself before he'd let the dog get into any harm. But I personally don't want my husband in any harm either. So we'll see. We just have Mr. now, and we said we will stick with just him until he passes. And then we'll get another pair. We'll rescue another pair of older dogs. And going forward, because of our age and because we know that elder placements of dogs is difficult, that we will only adopt older dogs going forward. So, this has gone on much longer than I thought it would, and in 2 parts even. And I had more to show you. Oh, I'm going to just really quickly tell you about Piku. This is Piku. That's my son. Probably he was like a sophomore in high school, maybe junior year. But that's my son. And that is Piku. Piku was one of my niece's dogs, my sister's older of her twins. And Janet had been very allergic to animals, but she wanted a dog so bad. She could handle cats, which was weird, but dogs, no. And so I told her I was learning and studying angel communications that summer. And so I shared a book with her, and I said, this book has been very instrumental in helping me with angel communication and manifestation and all of that kind of thing. So maybe you can employ some of these techniques and see if you can't bring in a dog. And so I left her with the book that summer. And that fall, I got a call from her, and she says, oh, Auntie, you're not going to believe it. She says, this little dog literally showed up on my stoop in front of my door at the apartments. And I'm like, really? And she says, yeah. And this little boy was behind her, and he says, I found this dog on the street, and I've been going around asking people if this is their dog, because she seems like, she's been well taken care of. And so at first my niece said, oh, well, I'm really allergic to dogs. And then she remembered that she had been asking the angels to send her a dog that she could have and love on and not be allergic to. And that was when little Piku came into her life. And she had Piku for, probably 12 years, 13 years. She still had Piku when my mother passed in 2010. And she had her for a couple of years after that. And I think, well, if my son was still in high school, that was the late 90s. So, yeah. And she was several years old when Janet got her. So, and she has employed that technique to bring on 2 additional dogs after Piku passed. Piku, I used to call her the alien, because that dog, she didn't lick. She would, if she wanted to tell you hello, you put your forehead down to her, and she would lay her little head right against your forehead. So you were forehead, third eye to third eye, literally. And that's how she greeted. And every time she would do that to me, I would start getting a mental download. And I'm like, this dog is not a dog. This dog is an alien. She communicates like no other dog I've ever been around. And I swear she's an alien. But she was a brilliant animal, perfect for my niece. Managed to help her a lot with her anxiety and different issues. She got her through a divorce. She saw her into a new relationship and spent several years to make sure that was healthy before she finally left the planet. And then Janet went about seeking another dog, and she got a black dog, identical to Piku, only black, and his name was Nui. And he just passed this last fall. So she had managed to get a little female, younger, much younger than Nui, same kind of breed. And that's who she's got now, and she's a little sweetheart. But like I say, when it comes to animals, I could go on this all day, and I've only given you just the tip of the iceberg. Probably leaving out some of the best Sooner stories, of course, because like I say, he's incredible animal, and he's legendary in both families, mine and my ex's family too, who I still communicate with. And we're all on friendly terms. So they love to share their Sooner stories whenever I'm in town and pop in, get a hold of them for a visit. But I'm going to leave it at this for now. I think I'm going to go ahead and do another 2-card pull. I've got my Nature Whispers, my Golden Healer stone that you heard clunk early on in the other one. This one, I always forget the camera's up here. That is a Golden Healer palm stone. And I had that on these Nature Whisper cards, keeping good juju on the pack. And then I've been keeping this crystal close to me, and I don't know if you can see all the occlusions in there. But what I love about this crystal, I hope you can see it. It has, look at the lines, it has pyramids within pyramids within pyramids in this thing around the bottom. It's an amazing stone, and all the windows, the openings to go into it, it's got several really nice windows. Here's another really good one right there, to go in and communicate with this stone. But it's a dilly, and I've had it here sitting next to me. It's also, if you look at the face, it's a record keeper, I believe. I get my dyslexia, I can get things turned around. But I do believe when it's got a huge face, that's the record keeper. And so I haven't really sat and meditated with this stone. It's, like I say, it's a powerhouse. And I've just been keeping it close to me during recordings. But we get on stones, we'll be here for another 2 days because I'm a rock hound. Have been all my life. I've got stones that I've had since I was 8-9 years old. Still have them, still toting them around. But on to what we're doing. the Nature's Whispers. Nature's Whispers. Whispers. 2 cards, please. 2 cards. And please tell us what we need to focus on for this week. With everything swirling around us energetically, cosmically, what are 2 things that should hold our focus for this week, please? Please, please, please. Okay. And I'm going to spread these. You? Who else? Who else? Who else? What have we got? Ooh. All right. I heard you. And there we go. Okay. So, we got our first card. Oh, I just love these cards. They're so perfect. Be gentle with yourself. I was needing this message last week, and I think I finally keyed into it because I was, like I say, I was trying to work on that next video for the Beatitudes, and I was getting some things, but it wasn't feeling like it wanted to come yet. So I was like, okay, well, I won't press this. And then I just was so exhausted. But be gentle with yourself. And I think the visuals of that card really kind of say everything. Enjoy nature. Look at the beauty of birds. Get some beautiful flowers if that's what brings you joy this week. And the clouds above, even if they look a little stormy, we know how beautiful it is after a good rainstorm and the air's so sweet and the critters are happy, especially if it's been a warm day, which we're not getting too many of those right now. But so be gentle with yourself. And infinite blessings. That's the other one. And it's a beautiful fairy flying. It appears on the back of an owl over a little hamlet. And snowflakes are falling. And she's just sprinkling her little snowflakes and fairy dust and bringing blessings to anyone willing to open their heart to them. So, very good cards for this week. Be gentle with yourself. And be aware of infinite blessings to all of you. Until next time, thank you for visiting BJ's Esoteric Musings. If you like the content you've heard today, please like and subscribe. And I don't know if I'm so new on this yet. I don't even know if I have a notification bell to tell you something else coming along, but don't even worry about that. But if you do like and subscribe and even leave a little note in the comments or a little emoji, something, all of those things help build the algorithm for the channel. And I will look forward to seeing you for the next installment on BJ's Esoteric Musings. You have a beautiful week, everyone. And bye-bye.